Hi, my name is Daniella, and you are listening to the Audacious Path podcast, the one and only podcast that is specifically aimed at adventure creators just like you and me. Every 2 weeks, I talk to other creators in the adventure sphere and I ask them about how they started, grew, and monetized their adventure creator business. Now, this episode is going to be very special. I am walking Abby Miggins from Sailing Every Day through the process of what she should think of before she starts her own YouTube channel. I'm going to talk to her about things such as what are her expectations? How much is she willing to invest? Does she have any experience in editing and storytelling? And what does she think her ultimate value proposition is? You can find Abby on Instagram at sailing.everyday, or you can look at her art site, so at Abby Miggins _art, or you can go check out her website where she has some beautiful art pieces, abbymigginsart.com. And I hope you guys enjoy the episode. I would love to hear what you think. You can send me a DM at The Audacious Path and enjoy the episode. So to start out with, tell me a bit about yourself pre-boat life, and then also how long have you been on the boat? What have you guys been doing? Just tell me about yourself.
My name is Abby. I'm an artist. I feel really privileged to grow up in a small 1 square mile town in central coastal New Jersey as the youngest of 5 kids. So I never stepped foot onto a sailboat until I met my partner, Max. And now it's about 4 years ago since we met. A lot of people have this whole venture of finding their boat. But for us, the boat found us, and we were at a crossroads in our relationship, and it just felt like the perfect time for us to really venture into something that was just our own. So we've been living on the boat ever since we got it.
Hell yeah. And so you're hauled out right now. What's the plan for the haul out? How long are you being out for?
For the winter season, so last year we're in New Jersey right now. Max and I both grew up in New Jersey. So we're in our home base right now. And we're lucky to have the support of our families to be able to live on land and have the community here that we grew up in. The plan is to make the necessary upgrades that we need to safely and comfortably venture around the world. We want to set sail in 2025 for good and just send it. So, it's a never ending task of boat jobs, but Max is capable of fixing anything and everything. So that's awesome.
And I'm guessing that part of that kind of leads into why you want to start a channel, because you're probably looking for an income, right?
Yes, I mean, that would definitely be helpful. So I work as a freelance artist doing running my own business. And so I've been doing that for a year and a half as well. And it just feels like this creative lifestyle just has really aligned for us. And I never realized how many opportunities are out there. And it just feels really amazing I always say, magic flows where energy goes. And it's we really are putting all of our energy into the boat. And I'm putting all my energy into art, and Max is hustling on land, working in mechanical contracting, trying to make money. And we want to pay off the boat and have money to, when things break, as they always do.
What is your skill level? What do you feel like you're bringing to the table in terms of being able to successfully start a channel? I'm thinking things like storytelling and filming and editing and starting a business, but it might be something else that you're also thinking of as well.
I work with a lot of different mediums as an artist, and I just feel like I'm very creative. And I never running my own business now as an artist, and I also teach art classes to kids as well. Um, I didn't realize how much is involved. I've become a photographer, I've become a social media manager and a marketer and trying to make a website with my friend, and it's just all these components, and I'm like, well, why not add a videographer to my repertoire?
Are there any specific YouTube channels that inspire you? or like things that you want to incorporate from channels that you watch?
We've connected with Max and I went down to the Annapolis Boat Show a couple months ago, and we were able to actually meet some of the people that we follow sailing Catalpa. They're Australian family, and they actually have the same exact boat as us, a Pearson 530. And Max was the one that like found them initially and was like, "Oh my gosh, like these people have the same boat as us. How cool is this?" And then we got to meet them in person and connect with them. And their son Taj is also an artist. So I was like, I'm not the only artist living on a sailboat. Like, how cool is this? So we definitely find inspiration from them. I found you from the Real Red Seas, which who we also got to meet at the Annapolis Boat Show, and we've been following their journeys. I also started looking into sailing Magic Carpet. I think that you interviewed their way of telling a story. I think is really beautiful, and that's what I want to be able to portray. I really want to like paint this picture and so it's been really helpful to listen to your resources because I'm like, "Oh, I'm closing that loop." Like so people aren't wondering about this like just on our like Instagram right now.
Okay, this one's going to be a bit of a button pushing one, but why do you think that you have what it takes to be successful on YouTube?
We like make things happen. And that's what I was attracted to Max about when I first met him. Like his energy is just like very exciting and you could tell that he's like going places. I'm like, I want to go where he's going. So, and like the idea behind starting a YouTube channel was because I want to be able to share these like I call them synchronistic sailing stories because like ever since we got the boat there's been all these like weird unexplainable things that have come to us and I want to be able to share those magical experiences and I think Max and I are both kind of just like characters in our in our own right. Like when we were down at the boat show, multiple people came up to us and they recognized us and Max was like blown away because he's not really like too involved with the social media aspect. That's like my gig, but he was like, "Holy crap, Abby! Like, what are you doing? Like, people actually recognize us." I mean, Max has like flaming red hair, and I have like a giant afro. So, and I dress like a crazy clown. So people like you can spot us from a mile away. But I just think I think we're unique. I think we're authentic, and we're not afraid to put ourselves out there. Like I am constantly vulnerable every day with my artwork. I'm sharing like I'm bearing my soul to the world. So I feel like now's the time to just like really lean in.
That's actually really good. It's good to hear. Like, I think, you know, like when you go into it, and for one, you obviously understand that like authenticity is a really important part of being a YouTube channel. And I think that one thing that people miss that you have is like, you really have to like yourself. Like, you have to like yourself if you're on YouTube, because for one, like you are trying to put yourself out there. And if you're not willing to show all of it and you don't like all of yourself, well, people can pick up on that and people want to see all of you. And the other one is that it's inevitable that you're going to get trolled and trolls suck. And if you don't like yourself, well, it's going to be really painful and not fun. So hold on to that and don't let anyone kind of bang that down. Like, you gotta, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but like you gotta hold on to that for sure. That is something that will make you a successful YouTuber if you are truly like who you are. So
Yeah, I feel like I'm a recovering people pleaser. I used to care a lot.
So I want to jump into expectations, because I think that expectations is a part, like if you don't understand what is realistic and what isn't realistic, that's where a lot of people have the downfall, right? Like they put out 100 videos, which is a ton of time. They're still not growing. They're still not successful. And then they get frustrated and give up, right? And so the goal here is to get you past that hump. And this is also something that I offer when my courses eventually launched, is this expectation thing, because I really want to make sure that people are looking realistically. So the first one is, how much time are you willing to invest? And I'm thinking like, how long would you be willing to commit to this channel in terms of years, where you weren't able to sustain yourself financially?
We are willing to invest like a lot of time, but at the same time, I also have to be like, running um a business and even like posting things online. It's a full-time job. So I feel like when I focus more on my art, then my art does better and reaches more people. And then like when I focus on the sailing, that I see the results. So I see the direct correlation between like my time and the consistency. So it's definitely hard to do both. So, but like my art right now is what's making money. So I have to keep painting.
This was one of the things that probably was a bit hard for me to consume, to be honest. My channel's been going, so I've had 3 channels now, and about to start a fourth. Every time I start it, it gets monetized faster though, so I'm learning so much. But the first channel, I was doing weekly videos, and I was able to get monetized within 6 months, and I made at max $700 a month was the maximum I made, and I made on average $100 a month. And now I'm down to about $10 a month because I don't produce videos on that channel anymore. But that was over the course of at the end of 2 years when I stopped producing. So just to give you like what to expect, I was at the high end of success. And the reason I say this is because I would say that you're going to go probably like, my guess is that you're going to probably monetize pretty fast, but you're going to go for a very long time with only making like $100 a month off of it. So that's just something to just like put in the back of your mind as like, is this worth it? Because you are going to be putting a ton of time in it. How much time do you think it takes to make a video?
I know that it takes me a really long time to edit a reel, and that's like less than a minute. So I can only imagine, like, it's actually scary to think about. And that's what I don't understand. Like, how are people putting because like I understand it's such a process. It's an art form. You want to be producing the best version of your video before you put it out there. How do people do that?
Well, this is kind of sad to say, but to be honest, you most so 2 things happened. I've got an interview with the Real Red Seas one coming out. So the Real Red Seas is a channel that edits for other big channels, and a lot of big channels are hiding the fact that they use editors, and the editors do most of the work. So that's one part of that. I personally use an editor. I'm not hiding that. I'm putting that on the openings. I think it's really important that we're transparent about these things. My editor does half of my videos, and I do the other half because I just simply don't have the time as a person producing a newsletter, a podcast, and a vlog. Like it's just not possible. But I would say that planning the videos, I plan my videos personally, and I recommend people to do that. I spend about maybe an hour or 2 hours. So that involves like researching the place that I'm going, and then kind of getting like a skeleton of what I think might happen. Of course, things change because you're in the adventure world. And then if you're trying to produce something that's like semi good quality, you should expect about 1 hour per minute you produce editing time. And if you're trying to produce something that's really high quality, you should expect about 3 hours per minute produced. Like if you watch Sailing Nahoa, right? They did a video on like how to produce like videos weekly, and they're like, you really have to take the creativity out of it and systematize. And so that's just something to be aware of, is that like it does become like a task. And he says like he'll do like one scene that's creative just to make sure that he retains the fun in it, but mostly you're systematizing, and you come up with like a process that makes it happen as fast as possible. So how does that sound to you? And be realistic. Don't feel like you have to like show anything. Is I'm part of this conversations, I want to show people like what does it actually take to do this, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that I'm realizing I need to be more organized. So I've started to make like different folders in my phone, and I think I mentioned to you we don't even have a laptop right now. So that's definitely holding us back, and that's going to be a huge learning curve. For me is to learn how to edit and what programs work, and like just like actually sitting down, and because right now I just do everything from my phone, which is great, but we need to we need to keep evolving. So
And that kind of brings me to my next question is like, how much money are you willing to invest? So just to give you like another kind of overview. So I use an iPhone, a new one, mostly because my previous phone was so crappy, but also I found that I use my phone to film probably more than any other camera. I use my phone because it's so easy on a boat when something bad happens to just have it in your pocket and grab it out real fast. So I found my iPhone that I was using it way more. So there's the iPhone. And then I have a good big editing laptop because I edit pretty long videos. The longer your videos are, the better software computer you're going to need because you're going to be using more power. And then I have a DSLR, which, oh, I love my DSLR. It's completely unnecessary. I will just throw it out there, but it is my camera of choice. I love my DSLR. The images are so crisp. They're amazing. And then obviously in the boat world, you're going underwater. So I also have a GoPro. I have a nice mic for voiceovers. I have a ring light that I'm using right now. And a couple other things. And I would say probably my total gear cost is between $10,000 to $15,000. And I've accumulated that over 3 years. I think it's really important to think about like what do you want in terms of quality for your videos and also uh, different things that you want to capture versus like what are you willing to invest. So for example, like the GoPro, you can't get any underwater footage unless you have a camera that's willing to go underwater. So do you want to invest in that, or is that part of like what you want to provide in your videos?
yes, definitely. And that's a good question. And um I like the idea of seeing it as an investment because it really is. Like I just got the new iPhone as well because I do everything from my phone. So I was like, this is like I have to do this and like, getting more storage and that's always an issue. I also think Max and I are pretty like resourceful, and I like to think I'm very thrifty. Max grew up in the sailing world. He was sailing when he was in the womb. His parents are both sailors, so he has a lot of connections. He grew up racing, so he has a lot of connections like in the sailing world. Like someone he knows the other he was talking to the other day said that they have an extra drone camera that they want to give to us. So we're like, "Okay, so that's great." So, we definitely, wanna keep our costs down, but I think it is important to invest in the things that are gonna set us apart. I'm really, like, reaching out to a lot of people, and, like, we have a couple partnerships, like, in the works already, so that's, like, really exciting. So yeah, I'm trying to, like, work all the angles we possibly can.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that like popped in my head as you were saying that is just like being aware that like people say like, why aren't you getting sponsorships right now? I'm like, the reality is I don't have freaking time. Like, so like if you're thinking about like getting sponsorships and partnerships, and that's gonna be something that you're always going to be nurturing, right? Like where's that time coming from that might have money elsewhere kind of thing. So like that is something to just think about. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but like where would your time be most profitable is something that like is really just something to keep in your mind. You don't want to think of this as a business, and I can feel like past me being like, hey, this is supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be a channel, it's about my life, etc. But the earlier you start thinking of this as a business, doesn't mean you can't have fun, but the earlier you start thinking of this as a business and start thinking with that mindset, the faster you're going to become profitable. And that I think that's something that a lot of people don't see in these big channels that like blow up, is that A, they're either lucky, or B, they're being strategic. So
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, and I think listening and reading your content has really like helped me understand that and like where to prioritize our time and our energy. So, yeah, it's all very interesting and new to me because I never thought I would be this like entrepreneur, but I really feel like I'm like channeling my dad. My dad died in 2017, so he's not around anymore, but I feel like he's with us and he's guiding us, and I know that he would be super proud of like what I'm trying to do. So,
you can do this. You and anyone else listening, you can do this. You can absolutely do this. How are you going to make sure that trolls don't seep your energy. And I will just give you like my own personal example. I don't know if you know much about my backstory, but I was married and in a relationship for 13 years, and I went sailing with my partner, and he got very, very sick, almost died while we were living on our boat. And I recorded the whole thing on my previous one of my previous channels, and that is one of the reasons why the channel blew up. And you'll find this as you get into YouTube more, that a lot of channels have some kind of like major event that pivots their growth real fast. Like it just like makes it happen. And that was one of those channels. So when my partner and I decided to break up, which I'm sure you can understand is like there's many reasons why people break up. There's no way I'm putting all of that on YouTube. But you know, everyone likes to assume that they saw the whole story, and that because I was the one putting my life on YouTube, and to some extent I was protecting my ex because I didn't want them. It wouldn't be fair. It was my channel, right? Like it wouldn't be fair to like throw all my crap online and show all the stuff that like he was doing to me as well. So all they saw was me taking responsibility for the crap that I had done. Does that make sense? And I got torn to pieces, and I was in the middle of something that was incredibly vulnerable as well. So I was going through my own stuff, and it was awful. It was freaking awful. Now, obviously, like, well, not obviously, but hopefully you don't experience something like that. But what I learned from that is that trolls know how to make it personal. It's going to be personal, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to suck. And you've got to make a policy. You've got to figure out how you're going to deal with the energy and protect yourself.
This is a very good question. I honestly haven't put too much thought into this yet because we don't really have trolls yet, but I feel like we probably will. Obviously, like if we grow, then that's inevitable. And I'm a big proponent of protecting your energy, and obviously it's easier said than done. I feel like I need help around this because I don't know. Like, I'm very sensitive, I'm very emotional. I try not to take things too personally. And I do feel like this happens with my art. Like, a lot of times people say things to me, and I'm just like, I can't believe you just said that. Like, that is so wild. But I also feel like I'm like just a lot more mindful than the average person because of my like psychology degree. So like I'm just trying to discern like what are just projections from people, and I think that has been helpful to realize that like this doesn't have to do with me, like, and just like have empathy for those people. Like I feel bad if you're like commenting negative things on our posts, like that's not gonna get anybody anywhere, but I don't know. Like I know some people are just like, oh, block them or like don't write back or just whatever, but I don't know. Like I really don't know what is gonna happen.
The way that I recommend, because I actually again have a module on this, or a lesson on this in my course, is I recommend people think about of course, protecting your energy, but also think about the kind of community you create when you decide how to deal with it. So, for example, for me, like I want my channel to be a safe emotional place. Like that's really, really important to me. So I don't want people seeing those comments. On one hand, it makes people not realize how much hate I get, but on the other hand, it makes it seem like a safe place for everyone. So because they don't see the nasty comments. So YouTube does allow you to like block words. And so like there's like people were calling me a narcissist for a while, or they'll ask about my ex, or they'll ask about different things. So any of those words related to any of those things that I think are nasty or triggering, I have them filtered. So they have to be approved by me. And that way no one will ever see them. And that for me is thinking about protecting myself, but also protecting my community. Whereas like, I'm trying to think of this other lady. She responds, I forget what her name, but she responds with like these kind of like funny jabs. Like it's actually kind of funny looking at her channel. Like she like will jab at them just a little bit. And that has created a community of people who like do these tiny little jabs. So I think being mindful of like, what do you want to create? Like, because as a YouTuber, you're creating community. I don't know if you have thought about that, but that is part of your job, is to create a community.
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like that is where this is all coming from, is the community aspect of it. And with that comes boundaries. And, like that was something I didn't really like. Not everybody grows up learning about boundaries and having boundaries. And I feel like I was really fortunate to go to grad school and learn a lot. I went to this like very woo-woo grad school out in New Mexico. And the best thing about it was that I got to learn about myself and my own patterns because their philosophy was if you're going to be helping other people, you need to learn your own insecurities and projections and things so you don't put that on somebody else and you can actually learn how to actively listen and do these things. So we learned about boundaries. I never want to make people feel bad, but if someone's going to make me feel bad and I have a clever thing to say back, I might just say it.
If you're enjoying this episode, then I also recommend that you sign up for my newsletter where every 2 weeks I share research-backed and tested advice on how to start, grow, and monetize your adventure creator business with a focus on YouTube. Now, my newsletter is extra special in the next couple of months because I will be releasing the first version of my adventure creator course and community to my newsletter. So you'll get access for 1 year. And if you're part of my newsletter, that means that you will get a discount code, a very generous one actually, and you'll get access to an affiliate link so you can actually monetize off of referring other creators. So there's a link in the description, a link in the bio, and enjoy the rest of the episode. So what we're going to talk about now is like your value proposition. And this is basically like how I recommend creators to think about their channel and what they can potentially monetize. So I'm going to kind of take my quick theory where I'm coming from and what my whole course is kind of around is that the average lifespan of a creator is 5 to 7 years, right? That is coming from a former YouTuber. He's got a channel called, I can't remember, but I can link it below. And he used to work for YouTube for like 13 years, whatever, or 10 years, something like that. And he said that the creators that make it past 5 to 7 years tend to be focused on a product or a service or something else that sits outside of YouTube. And their channel is meant to point people in that direction. Now, the way a lot of the sailing community in the sailing YouTube world is created is this like lifestyle vlog thing that is very much pointing towards like a patron or ads or they do sponsorships. And that model can work for some people, but there in order for that model to work for you, you have to have what I call the vlogger formula. And I won't go through every step of the vlogger formula, but it's normally things like you either have like a really, really nice boat that people want, or you've taken on a very unique project boat that everyone's kind of excited to see if you can make it work. One of the reasons that like Expedition Evans worked is because they had a boat that like was completely crap. They got it for really, really cheap and they fixed it up from themselves. But they also had other parts of the vlogger formula. They were really, really good looking people. She already had the skills of photography that she was bringing to the channel. They had good storytelling. So unless you have the vlogger formula, my recommendation for people is figure out what your value proposition is and start pointing all of your videos in one direction. That doesn't mean that you can't talk about your lifestyle and all of that. But if you have that focus early on, you're going to get profitable faster. And I think it's important to not think about it from profit, but we'll talk about that shortly. But the goal is to get sustainable, right? Like you don't want to be putting all of your effort into these videos and not making money. Like it's so much freaking work. So like, let's see if we can get some focus. So to start out with, I want you to think back to a past version of yourself and think about what problems have you solved, right? Where did you excel? And what did you used to do for work or in your personal life?
So for me, like I was always in the ocean. I was always making something. I was collecting things in nature and creating. And I just feel like I come from a lineage of teachers, and I feel like I'm naturally a teacher. My job in high school was like my summer job in high school. Most people were like working at a restaurant or babysitting, and I was working as an in-home based therapist for kids and teenagers on the autism spectrum. And that was where I really learned that I feel like working with people with special needs is like one of my callings, and also working with children because I feel like since I'm so intuitive and empathetic and can like feel people's energy from a mile away, like I just love hanging out with kids and people who are on the spectrum because they're so blatantly honest and authentic, and like they're willing to, be silly, and who cares like what people think. So I definitely feel like those are my like callings and where like succeeded in the past, and I've also realized that like art is just such an amazing way of communicating with people. Like I've literally seen it firsthand. I think art therapy is so magical because I've worked with people who are nonverbal that were able to express themselves through art. And like on our travels, we meet kids and people who don't speak our language and we're able to communicate through art. And so I feel like that is really where my like true path lies in like connection, helping people, and art for sure.
All right. So, what makes you angry or breaks your heart or makes you want to cry? What are the things that you are critical about?
I definitely will defend people who don't have a voice, and I feel like I'm also like an advocate for people that don't have a voice, and so when I see other people disrespecting like other people, it really breaks my heart. I don't know, losing my dad obviously was like a huge turning point in my life. He was my biggest fan and like super inspiring and I would always go to him for advice. So I think like that just changed my whole perspective and now I'm but it's also like I'm always trying to look at things as like if there's a silver lining and like growing up like my family has always used humor as a coping mechanism. So it's like now yeah, so like now I'm in the dead dads club and like I never I never imagined that like here I am and I would never want to initiate people into this club, but now I see it as like I have another level of connecting with people. And so now I have this ability to feel what it's like to lose my dad. And like even I listened to a podcast, they were interviewing Sailing Catalpa, and she was saying the same thing, how they both lost parents early in their life and it just changed their whole perspective. So and it's so cliche, but like people say life's too short and I'm like I want to shake them and be like no, like it really really is. Like I want to see more of like women supporting women. I think that would be amazing, and also in like the sailing world, it's infuriating to me when people assume that I'm not capable of doing something because I'm a woman. And I'm like, oh man, that really grinds my gears. I grew up with three older brothers and I've always been like very competitive and athletic and feel like I'm capable of, getting off a sailboat without your help. Thank you very much. I live here. Like,
So, what do you study? What are the things you find that you're like Googling about or you're learning about or you're researching like just throughout your like the last year? Like, what are you just naturally learning about?
definitely, like mentioned, like I'm just sitting on the boat and I'm trying to, I think it's very important to tap into what we're consuming, and who and what we're spending our time around and what are the messages that we're taking in. So I try to use my time wisely and I've definitely been like tapping into different podcasts. I like to listen to the Ocean Cruisers podcast about, fellow liveaboards and like what they're experiencing. All the sailing, psychology, art, that's my jam for sure.
And then what do you have results in? Like, what's something that people come to you for that you're good at?
I'm definitely like a really great baby wrangler. I love babies and kids. I have six nieces and nephews. I became an aunt when I was 13. Um, so I've always been surrounded by kids. I worked as a nanny before. That was actually how I met Max. And yeah, I'm definitely good at like understanding. I'm very like empathetic and I feel like I can feel what people need and like the kind of support that I can offer. Um my art appreciation classes for kids feel really like in alignment with my goals and what I love to do. It feels really inspiring to get to like fuel this next generation because my my nanny and my grand and my mom have always like really instilled this appreciation for art, and I'm obsessed with Frida Kahlo. So I yeah, it's really cool. I just want like people to be able to express themselves authentically. Like that's really it. And I think to get people to that point, you really have to embody what you're doing.
With those ideas, so I don't know if we can do this now, but we could try to do like a surface level. You'd want to do this in your own time as well. But you want to think about like what are the possible ways that you could monetize all of this, like what we just went through. Take all of those answers that you had, and you want to think about like what could potentially be monetized. And I'm using Rory Vaden. He runs Brand Builders Group, which is one of the biggest branding agencies in the world. And he says that if you're an influencer or you're online or you're making content, there's 5 main ways that you can monetize your content. So the first one is things like products, and that would be a book, a clothing line, equipment, day planners, stuff like that, where it's like physical. Then you have ads and affiliates, so that you're basically selling access to your audience. You can sell information. So that would be things like video courses, membership sites, assessment certifications, any kind of, information. Then you have deals, which is when you have, you're doing brand partnerships and stuff like that. And it can also be like you're doing like a show or something like that, but deals with third parties. And then the final way is services, which is the fastest way to monetize. Not the best one in terms of ROI, but the fastest way. And that would be things like consulting. And they recommend people start services if you can, but that's just, those are the 5 main options. So if you were to just off the top of your head, like what would be some ideas of how you could monetize what you're doing?
I think, well, so our friend Amelia is she just created my art website, which we're really proud of, and she's working on our sailing website right now. And we were had a meeting last week about how I want to have them intertwined but also separate. Like people like, "Oh, do you want to support us? You could support us by checking out Abby's artwork and buying some of her work." And I'm like, I'm right now leaning into the community of where we are, and I'm putting it out there. I'm like, we both grew up here. We have so many connections. People want to support this dream and this goal and this story. And every market I go to, I made this big poster of your support helps keep our boat afloat and fuels our dreams of sailing around the world. And I'm just like putting that out there as much as I can because it feels like it's in alignment and it's all kind of coming together. I think that people really do want to support like a story and a vision, and um yeah, just like continuing to focus in that way, I think feels authentic and feels like it's gonna work.
And I think it's really important when you, because I think this is something that you should do. I've got a resource that I just released with all of these questions that I've asked you. But I think it's really important that in this stage, like this, what can you possibly monetize or how, to be really open minded and don't say no in this part, right? Like that's the next step, is saying like this won't work, this won't work, this won't work. But in this stage, you really should be thinking like anything can work. And just off the top of my head, like having listened to your responses and knowing what like the options out there, like it sounds like you're like really could have like your biggest asset is like the community that you could create. So something like Creators Warehouse or Patreon would be a really, really good idea. And then of course that art focus like that. And it sounds like that's kind of like what you're thinking. But so the reason this is important is because what you want to be thinking about is, if you're going to offer like some kind of membership that's going to be art focused, then you want your videos to all be pointing there, like you want to, what would it take to get people who are interested in that thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense for sure. It just feels weird to like the different tiers. I get it. And like obviously we have control over what we want to put out there. Like right now it just feels weird to me to be like, "Hey, like give us money, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I want to be able to reciprocate that support by, like giving them what they want. And I guess that's what it is, like figuring out what people want.
And I always say to people when I've been coaching them and on this podcast that what you want to do is you want to get yourself into what I call a service mindset, right? Like, how can I best serve my audience, right? And if you're serving your audience and you're thinking from that point of view, well, then getting them into your membership community should be a no brainer. And one example, of course, is my course. I will absolutely 100% promote my course and talk about it with anyone because I truly freaking believe in it and I'm serving people. Like, I remember how freaking hard it was for me 3 years ago to start my channel. And I see the lessons that I learned in having grown real fast, having to have pivot, having started new channels, all of that. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be hard for everyone if I can pass on my knowledge in some way. And I'm not like, obviously, like, I want to be able to go out and explore and I want to be able to go like live this adventurous lifestyle. But first and foremost, I want to be able to help people start their channel so that they can do that too. So getting yourself into a service mindset will make it it will make you naturally create something that you want to put people in. You want to push them in that direction because you believe in it, right? Like, I think that when people just ask for patrons blindly, it's like, well, you haven't thought about how you're serving, because if you think about how you're serving, it's something that it's going to resonate with you.
Yes, definitely. And that makes me think of your conversation with when you were interviewing SV Avocet. So she's like a wizard and I see her popping up all over the place and that's awesome. And you guys talked about the same thing where when you support people, like what goes around comes around. And I think that's also what's lacking. Like some people aren't willing to collaborate. And I know like in my art business, like even the new feature on Instagram where it's like you can literally collaborate with somebody on a post and then it reaches both of your networks. Like for me, that's like seems like such a win-win. Like why wouldn't you we both like it's a good deal when we both benefit. So like when people don't want to do that, I'm like, why not? Like, are you like what's going on, So it's interesting to learn about these things for sure.
The next question you want to think about after you have all the ideas, and I think that, again, this is something you should brainstorm again on your own. You want to go through those business ideas and you want to think about, well, what do you really want to be doing long term? And you want to think about, like, what does a dream day feel like to you? What impact do you want to have on the world? Can you imagine making 50 videos on that topic, or would you get bored after 10? And there's 5 things that a really good business should always have. It doesn't necessarily need to have all 5, but it should have as many as possible if you want it to be as big as possible. So the first one is digital. And the reason why is because you don't have to pay for goods. You don't have to organize like the logistics of sending things out. There's no physical inventory you have to hold. Websites that are like drop shipping do kind of help with this, but products are going to be one of your hardest things to do. The next one is automated. So you want to make sure that people can buy your product without ever having to talk to you. And so one example would be like when I eventually put up my course sale page, someone can go to my website, they can pay me to enter my course, and we never actually have to have a conversation for them to finally get the product delivered. I personally want to keep having that conversation with people. It's not something I'm going to completely take out, but if I have a conversation with you today and you decide that like a week from now you're like, yeah, actually I do want to invest in this, we don't need to talk again, right? You can make that sale without ever having to talk to me. The second one, or third one, sorry, is reoccurring. So people pay every month, every week, every year, or something like that. It's a reoccurring thing. That's going to be like if it's a one-off thing, then that's going to be like you want your customers to be coming back. Evergreen, so you never have to update the model. So for example, my course, again, like once I record all 9 hours of my course, I can throw this onto my community, and then I probably will update it, but I don't need to update it in order to keep making sales. Does that make sense? And then The last one is scalable. So you want to be able to keep adding more and more customers without adding to your individual efforts and costs. Again, going back to my course, if I wanted to, I could just increase the number of people who could come in, and then people can keep making those sales and I don't have to do anything. I can just sit back and watch it happen. That is part of the reason why I chose to have a course to be like what I focused on. I wanted to be able to help creators, but ultimately the course fulfilled as many of those things as possible. So what are your thoughts on that? What were you thinking as I went through that?
My brain is just like spinning with like, I don't know, like how, like Max and I have talked about, like getting our captain's license and being able to take people out on the boat. And like, I think for us, like being able to like sell an experience would be really cool. But obviously like that's so much work. And um we also have to be thinking about like what is sustainable. Like right now, it's like the busiest season for me as an artist because I'm making gifts for people and I'm making oyster shell ornaments, and people in our area want to spend money on ornaments, and I'm like, wow, that's great. Like, so I'm going to keep cranking them out. But when we're, somewhere remote in the world, like I'm not going to be shipping out these things because maybe it's not, like maybe it's going to cost me more to ship than it is to actually create the piece. So like these definitely are all very important things to be thinking about. This is like kind of opening up a whole new avenue for us to look more into for sure. So I appreciate this definitely.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly like, and the fact that you don't have the answers is kind of like what I'm trying to get at here, is that like so many people go into the YouTube world and they think like sponsorships, like what you said, right? But like if you're thinking like what do you like, what life do you want? Like you don't have to follow everyone else. If you, and I'm not someone who has been very good about this. This is actually again like one of the results of that course, having gone into that like I finally was like, I right now am building the life that I dream of, right? Like that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to build the life that you dream of. And if you can put that dream in your mind, you can focus on it. In fact, it's right on the other side of my computer. Like I can see my vision of like what I want my life to look at. Then it gives you the focus to do things now that we're going to build towards that bigger thing of that life you dream. And for me personally, I want to be more creative with my videos and being like systematizing my videos and being able to put them out and grow the audience in the way that's necessary if you're going to get on YouTube isn't actually that much fun for me. And so I want to get to a place where it's so systematized that I can go back and start being creative again in my, probably more in the filming side, not the editing, because I don't really enjoy that part as much. But that's what I want to build. I want to build that creative freedom for myself because right now, in order to grow, I don't have that creative freedom, you know? And so I'm thinking like super long term. That's the whole point of this, is to get you to think like, where do you want to be in 10 years? You know, like what can you build now that will make the life absolutely freaking perfect 10 years from now?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's such a dream. It's so wild that like we get to do this, and I would love this for everybody. Like lean into what inspires you and do more of that, but it's obviously like it's hard. Like it's not easy. Like a lot of people make it look easy, but it's not. And I do think like, consistency is the key to success. So I'm trying to keep it moving and grooving.
I will just say that don't decide on something until it resonates. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I would say. And resonate is such an interesting word for me because it never resonated. You're going to be grinding a little bit. Like there's a little bit of a grind. And then you talk to any YouTuber, you look at any of those videos where people talk about like what's it like to be on YouTube. And unless you have a vision for yourself and your business and your YouTube channel that you truly believe in, then there are going to be days where you're going to give up. And this is where like I go back to the expectation piece, is that the more you resonate with your goals, the more you are realistic about what this is going to take, the more likely you are to keep going and be successful. And that is ultimately what I want for anyone who is listening to this, and for you personally, is that you're going to be successful and you can do it. I'm just going to reinforce that one more time. You can do this. But this is why I'm pushing and asking these questions. So
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely helpful. And like for me, what keeps me going is the community. Like I love to connect with people. Like I literally write back to every single person. Max is like, "Oh my gosh, Abby, like you're writing paragraphs back to all these people." And I'm like, "I know because I really enjoy it and I want to help people."
once you have a vision in mind for like what you want to create, how you want to monetize, then we go back to the YouTube side of it, right? So the first part of all of this is just figuring out like where are you pointing people, right? So for me, I'm going to go back to my example again, my community. What kind of content, or sorry, what kind of audience do I need in order to get people into my course, right? And so obviously like I need creators. I need creators who are adventurers, and I need creators that are taking it seriously. Like they actually want to make this work, and they need to have a little bit of coin because I'm going to be charging for this, and it's not going to be like super cheap. Like it's not going to be expensive, but it's not going to be super cheap either. So I need to think about like what kind of content do I need to create to attract this type of audience, right? Now I'm also thinking about like how much time I want to put into this, because I don't have time to create more vlogs. I needed it to be low effort. So I'm doing these conversations that take about 2 or 3 hours to edit. That's it. It's going to attract all of the creators who want to do this, are taking it professionally because they're putting their time and energy into listening to a podcast. And eventually, this will be a group of people who, a small percentage of them, will be willing to invest in themselves and get a course. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you're like I see I'm so visual. Like I see like it's all connected. Like there's no it feels seamless to me. And like that's literally how we connected was Real Red Seas posted about how they were on your podcast and I saw your the audacious path and I was like, I love that word. And it was like adventure creators. I'm like, that's so me. Like this is us. Like this is so us. So I think like what you're doing is working. So keep on it.
The way I did it anyways, the way that helped me get through this is I figured out my goal. Like my goal was to get people in a course, and then I worked my way backwards to what would it take to get a creator in there, because a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll start and be like, I'm going to create lifestyle vlogs, and I want them to join my Patreon that's all about cooking, right? But what you want to do is, if I'm going to, so let's use your example, right? So let's just say that you created a community that all of the content was surrounding how inspiring being on a boat was, for your art, right? And you were talking about your art in that community, and that was a big focus of it, right? So what kind of content would you need to create to get someone in there? Well, you'd always want to talk about art in your videos, or you want to talk about how this moment is inspiring your art. You'd always want to refer to your art. You'd want that to always be kind of a focus in your videos, because you could talk about how you're refitting this boat, and you could talk about how you had today, you had to sand the bottom, right? But you need to do that in a way that's always referencing your art. Otherwise, you're just going to attract a bunch of lifestyle cruisers who are trying to learn about how to refit a boat, and that's not the audience that you want to get into your community. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. And I think this is also like something Max and I have talked about because like I'm trying to think how I can incorporate both of us and both of our passions. And it's like for me, it's like it keeps coming up as like it's this like visual juxtaposition. Like all of Max's like tools and stuff is always everywhere. And like, yes, I've taken over the boat with all of my art supplies, but I say to him, I'm like, at least my stuff is like visually pleasing to look at. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to look at all of your like crap like all over the place all the time. So yeah, I'm trying to kind of like have that focus and also like honor both of our passions and how we balance each other out because I really think we do and people need to like see that.
Yeah, and so then what in that case, because I actually again thought about like, okay, well, what do couples do in this circumstance? What you'd want to do is go through and do this process together. You'd want to go through and figure out like where your passions and where is the overlap, and then it becomes yours. The only thing that I would say, the caveat to that is, and it's funny because I talked to Maya from Selling Magic Carpet about this, is that if you're going to be doing the filming, if you're going to be doing the scripting, and you're going to be doing all of the editing, then truly this is your project. And in order for you to personally retain the passion and the resonance of it being something that you believe in, that you can hold on to and keep sustaining your energy, then it needs to be more aligned with you than it does him. Does that make sense? Yeah, and just being realistic about who owns this, I think is really important, because if it is both of yours, then you both need to equally put in the time and effort. Otherwise, like, yeah, it's not going to resonate. You're not going to enjoy doing refit stuff. But then she said that she was like, I hated doing the refit videos. It was not fun for me. It was really depressing, and like, you have to make sure it resonates. So, yeah. How can people find you?
Our sailing account on Instagram is sailing period every day. Same goes for Facebook, and Max is supposed to be on the TikTok, so I think we're on there as well. And then my art is Abby Miggins, underscore art on Instagram, and same on Facebook. And you can also check out my website, abbymigginsart.com, and sailingeveryday.com is coming soon. So thank you, and just reach out to me and stay connected.
Thank you so much for having a listen. If you found any value in this podcast, one of the easiest ways that you can say thank you is to leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Or if you're on YouTube, you can leave a comment or a like below. And that really helps tell these various platforms that this podcast is worth pushing. And it helps me reach more creators that need to hear this advice. So thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate it. I can't say that enough. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks.